Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is week 8 of From the Stands College Football Game Day Show. My name is Brian McCardle. 8 times in a row now, we have Mr. Andy Hopper, host of the Brew Party. To my left, Mr. Tom Scavetta, host of Review and Preview and Big Blue Avenue. To my right, introductions out of the way. We'll get right into our weekly recap for Week 7. Andy, I think you had a good result on your hands. Besides yourselves, though, throw some other games at us that you enjoyed from this past week.
Great results. I said on the show last week that we were going to lose by 28, and we won by 3 on the road against a very good Maryland team. Bowl is back in the conversation, homecoming this week against Wisconsin ILL. Other than that, there were some awesome games last week, fellas, that did not involve my team. I believe all 3 of our teams won last week. Is that correct information, fellas, or no?
We were on a bye, so I'll take it.
Okay, technically you did not lose. So
exactly.
Welcome to the winner's circle. Last Friday, Colorado blowing a 29-point lead against Stanford is just absolutely inexcusable. That one has to sting. Double overtime at home to just a really not good Stanford team. And then you just got absolutely lit up by Elick Ayo Minor, 13 receptions, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns. How the hell are we? Other than that, also in Colorado State overcomes a 17-0 deficit to Boise State at home. Walk-off field goal for the win, 31-30 for the Rams. Colorado-centric for me, I guess. And then Missouri getting a ranked win over Kentucky, winning by 17. Tommy's Notre Dame Fighting Irish whooping up on the USC Trojans as well. And then hat tip to Oregon State, held their own, looked very good against UCLA. And then finally, Pittsburgh beating a ranked Louisville team, coming off a win over Tom's Fighting Irish at home, 38-21. Definitely one I don't think any of us would have saw coming.
Nope. All right, Tom, what about you?
Yeah, Pitt over Louisville, Arizona over Washington State, which Brian called, by the way. But I don't think even
that
he
was
expected.
Unbelievable. The Cougars are dead, fellas. They're dead.
I don't even think Brian expected 44-6, but I'll let him speak on that. Washington, Oregon, wild finish. Did it without Jalen McMillan. Awesome game. Oregon outgained Washington by over 100 yards and outrushed them by over 100 yards, and they still could not find a way to win. Awesome game for both QBs. And, of course, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Caleb Williams with an atrocious performance. 3 interceptions in the first half with NFL scouts in attendance. Notre Dame said not today. Their secondary kept their wide receivers quiet. Not only did USC lose, they lost by 4 touchdowns. I repeat, USC lost 48-20. Audric Estime is great. Hartman continues to impress and make solid plays. The Notre Dame defense, though, is where the credit needs to be given. Al Golden devised an awesome game plan with Marcus Freeman. That defense had 6 sacks and 5 turnovers. J.D. Bertrand, Xavier Watts, 2 picks. Benjamin Morrison with a pick. They were awesome. At halftime, Marcus Freeman pointed out one thing when they were up 24-6. Instead of praising his team for their first half performance, he said, I wish we weren't celebrating after that third down play. That allowed them to kick the field goal and have more time to move it closer. So Marcus Freeman, being humble, talking like future great coaches and guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Maybe too soon to compare him to those guys, but I see potential there for Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, I think you guys covered all the games I wanted to as well. Washington over Oregon, that was an incredible game. Heisman moment there for Penix Jr. I think he's at this. If they make the playoffs, I gotta feel like he's the lock for the Heisman. Even if they lose in the semis, he's just been incredible. That was, I think, there was I can't remember which player it was, but he said on the sidelines while they were losing, waiting for the offense to go back on the field. He was freestyling on the bench about making a comeback win. So just completely in the zone. He is, the embodiment, I think, this year of the Heisman Trophy winner. So as long as he doesn't, slip up and have an awful game like Caleb Williams has had the last 2 weeks, I think he's got it in the bag.
And then jinxed it.
Well, speaking of jinxes, we all called Notre Dame last week. Tommy thought it was a jinx. I said 10-point win minimum. Like Tom said, 4 touchdowns, just absolute obliteration of that USC defense. And then the last one I wanted to mention, Florida actually looks pretty good now. They started the season very slow. They're kind of churning. Graham Mertz, over 400 yards this past week, outdoes Spencer Rattler as Florida beats South Carolina. If they keep this up, that might make that game a little bit more exciting for you, Mr. Scavetta, as he'll be heading to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party coming up soon as Florida takes on Georgia. Who knows? We might get a surprise there for that game. God, if Florida upsets Georgia, I don't know what the world might implode, but we will see.
No Bowers for the Bulldogs. Sorry, Tom,
Mertz.
Eat your heart out.
Put respect on Mertz's name.
Oh, you want some respect on Mertz's name? I'll tell you about 2020 when he came in as their backup and absolutely torched Illinois. Still is that rent free in the back of my head. And Wisconsin coming to town this week, playing their redshirt freshman backup quarterback. So it's just bad vibes, boys. We the last time this happened, it did not go well. It's nice to see Graham Mertz tear up defenses that aren't Illinois, because when he was at Wisconsin, it seemingly was only the Illini defense. But it's another guy I feel like we've talked shit about that transfers, goes somewhere else and figures it out. Interesting stuff, Brian.
Yeah, that is well put. Maybe we're a little harsh, and it's actually the coaches, the QB coaches, that are keeping these guys down.
I'd like to think they're tuning in every week and we're just giving them bulletin board material.
I can see it. Just a screenshot of our three faces with a quote in their lockers. But that'll wrap up the weekly recap and move us into our first segment here. It is fourth and short. We got 4 quick answer segments here from a little bit of weekly CFB news. Starting off, Caleb Williams, owner and CEO. You will not be calling him that anytime soon, but Mr. Williams is in the news again because his agent, this story is a little bit old, but is now resurfacing because of, we'll say, how easily Notre Dame tore up Mr. Williams this past weekend. Caleb Williams' agent is allegedly shopping Williams around to potential NFL teams, saying he will only enter the draft if he gets an ownership stake in the team that drafts him. The NFL banned this very quickly after, because Aaron Rodgers was attempting to do the same thing. So I want to know, I mean, this will be the quickest of answers. Do you think Caleb Williams, had the NFL not banned it, would he deserve it? And then secondly, if not him, is there any NFL player, past or present, that you think did or should have or could have deserved ownership stake in the past here? Andy, I'll start with you. Give us your take on Williams, and then if you got any other NFL players for us.
Yeah, I don't know how you can think this kid deserves an ownership stake before playing it down or a snap or taking a snap for the team. You're about to be paid handsomely. Whether or not you have the ownership stake, maybe you get to a point where you've been to the team with the team long enough that they're comfortable to put you into that role. But it seems a little bit ludicrous to me to that be one of the requests right off the bat. But the game has changed. It's not what it used to be. Any past or present, I mean, fucking Patrick Mahomes, I think is the easiest answer. I think Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, there's so many, Drew Brees.
Are we talking out of the draft here, or as in like a re-signed contract for these guys?
Yeah, I guess that would be my question for you. What were you thinking when you wrote the question?
I was thinking for
coming out. Correct.
Yeah, the coming out part.
Okay, that kind of changes the answer. I still think you could put Peyton Manning on there because he was like a consensus top overall guy. Maybe that changes my Mahomes answer. Fuck, that makes it a little bit more difficult. I don't know. I guess I'm just not very in on it. There's a lot of guys, are considered generational talents coming out and have all these high expectations, but does that necessarily mean they deserve an ownership stake before even being selected? I don't know.
Right. That's what makes it so damn risky and why the NFL tried to shut it down so quickly.
Who's to say you give it to him and then he's like, actually, I don't want to play.
I've been thinking about retiring, actually. Tom, what about you? Williams and any other NFL players?
Definitely not Caleb Williams. Some nerve. Again, we don't know if this is coming from him, agents, who it might be. After losing by 4 touchdowns to Notre Dame, you got absolutely disrespected out there. Caleb Williams has to earn his respect back first as a top prospect in this draft, because right now, I think he is definitely not the Heisman frontrunner anymore.
No, it dropped off a cliff. His odds are like plus 2,000, like 2,200. And
you could make the argument he might not even be the number 1 pick in the draft right now, if you're looking at things from, I think, a clear lens here. As far as any players in the past, I mean, no player deserves it, but if somebody came close to it, I mean, you want to go back and talk about like John Elway, maybe. You want to go back that far? Yeah, no. There's really no player that comes to mind, Brian. Sorry, I don't really have anybody else besides that.
All right, yeah. I figured it'd be an easy one, but I thought maybe we could get some sneaky dark horses in here. For me, obviously, no on Caleb Williams as well. He showed us these past 2 weeks exactly why he should not get an ownership stake. If you're going to demand something like equity in a team, you need to be like 195 out of 200 with your completions and like 10,000 passing yards by now at this point of the season to get, a stake in $100 million plus franchise. As far as players all time, I wouldn't say yes to any of these, but a few that I thought were interesting. Maybe one of the most generational talents to come out in the past 30 years that I think teams would have looked at. And if there was, a fight like they have with number 1 picks nowadays, Michael Vick. He was just an insane college football player, and I think he maybe could have baited, a team nowadays to doing it. And then another one, this is just because of how bad we were back in the day, Bo Jackson, back in 1986. Hell of an athlete, Bucks were still in their infancy and god awful at the time. So even if you're the owner, even if you're giving up 1% of the team, back then that's maybe worth like $5,000 in a pack of smokes. So you're not losing much, and you get Bo Jackson to stay, and he's invested in the team. And then just, I want to throw this out here. This has nothing to do with a player that I think deserves it. But while looking at draft picks, I just want to remind everyone that the number 1 pick in the 1974 NFL draft was named Too Tall Jones. That is Too space Tall Jones. Too tall. He was a defensive end out of Tennessee State, went to the Cowboys, and he was 6'9", so he did have the height to back up the nickname. Moving into the second topic for this segment, we have Tulsa Rice. We got a beer tasting, boys. They're going for a world record. Tulsa will attempt to set a Guinness World Record for the world's largest beer tasting event before Thursday's game with Rice. My question to you, boys, is does this make this one of the top 25 all-time games here in college football just because you're adding this event? Andy, I'll start with you. Is this event worth it, or is this just a bit of a gimmick here?
I mean, it's a gimmick to get people to show up, which I respect it. I love beer as much as the next guy. And, dudes rock is what I could say about this. I can only assume a guy in their marketing department was like, what if we just get a bunch of beer and try to break a record? But, I mean, I don't know if we can call this top 25 football game of all time. It's currently 35-10, Rice with the lead with 23 seconds left in the third quarter. So love the idea. I love the trying to break the record, but I don't know if it gives the game too much more significance in my eyes.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. If this was being done by Florida Georgia in Jacksonville for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, would that play into it? Or would you still need like a top 10 versus top 10 ranked game to throw this into elite territory?
I mean, that would make more sense, I guess, if it was at the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and it would certainly get more press, Right. It's like on Twitter, whenever a quarterback that's not Patrick Mahomes makes a good play, PFT commenter from Pardon My Take will tweet out, if Patrick Mahomes did this, the media would lose their minds. So yeah, they definitely get more coverage. I think more people would give a shit, but let's put it this way. If it was Saturday morning, I'm on my couch, I turn on Game Day, and it's the week of the Florida Georgia, and I see, holy fuck, what are they like? And they're there at this beer tasting. I'm immediately taking the over. I'm immediately betting the game. So I don't know. I guess I wish I would have known that before I put in my bets for today, because I should have looked at it before this morning, but I did not. But yeah, no, it really doesn't add too much for me.
All right, Tom, what do you think about this?
So let's give some clarity to what actually went down, right? So if they break the record or if they broke it, then yes, it goes down as a top 25 game. To put some clarity here, Tulsa partnered with Anheuser-Busch and Tulsa Oktoberfest to try for a Guinness Book of World Record for the world's largest beer tasting. The current beer tasting world record is 1,243 people in Spain, in Barcelona, Spain. Participation is free. I hope the fans took advantage of that. Participants must taste at least 3 beers apiece, and they get reduced price tickets to the football game, tickets to Oktoberfest, and a limited supply of Tulsa Steins. So I think it is worth it if you like to drink, if you like beer. You don't have to spend all that money in the stadium. But yeah, no, it's not like, this is clearly a gimmick, like Andy said. So I appreciate the effort for them to try to get more people to attend the game here. Yeah, I believe their team is led by JT Daniels, the quarterback. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he's at Rice now.
Christian McCaffrey's brother plays receiver.
So there you go. There's a couple names right there, but yeah, clearly a gimmick, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going gimmick as well, but I do think, I'll say if you're a fan at the game, it probably qualifies as a top 25 game if you get to experience this, if and only if, like Tom said, they actually break the record. And I will say, they aren't there to maybe participate. It says each participant is required to taste 3 beers. So this is a no drinky, no entry situation here, and I love that part about it. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party, you go and you drink at your own leisure. Here, it's if you're coming in, you're drinking. So yeah, but most importantly, I love this is just very American of college football team to do this. I don't know who had the record prior to 2022. Like you said, Tom, it was 1,200 and some odd people in Barcelona. But Tulsa saw this, the marketing department saw it. They saw that Spain is holding the record, and they said, "Nuh-uh, not my house. This is America. We'll be taking this record back right away, and we will be doing it with a drunken pleasure, even though our team, as Andy just said, is going to get blown out by JT Daniels-led Rice." So yeah, if you're a neutral, I think not top 25. If you're there, probably going to be one of the top 25 college football game experiences for those fans if they broke the record. Moving into the third of our fourth short here, we have Buy My Merch, and that is the story surrounding Shadur Sanders posting his merch links during the game when Colorado was leading Stanford 29-0. Is this one of the worst looks ever for a football player? Andy, I'll start with you.
It's not a great one. I'll tell you that. I'm not going to pretend to know what really goes on in a halftime locker room. I can assume if your team goes up by 29 points into the locker room, there's not really much the coaches are going to have to say, right? Like, they seem to be doing pretty well at that point. So maybe they had a few minutes of downtime, and I'm all for everybody getting their bag, especially with just that's just the way the game is these days with NIL and everything. So, I don't have a problem posting links and having merch and making some extra money, but it's definitely not a good look to be doing it 29 when you're up 29-0. What? It's not a good look to be doing it at halftime regardless. But
right.
To do it and then blow that 29-point lead is, oof. I'm sorry. I like you, Shadur, but yeah, I wouldn't do that again, buddy.
Yeah, it's a big yikes. Tom, is this one of the worst looks ever for a college football player?
It's up there. Whether it was him during halftime, someone on a social media team, this cannot happen. And unfortunately, it could cause as a distraction. Probably part of the reason why they lost the game, to be honest. No one in Colorado looked like their head was in it in the second half. It was very, very embarrassing. But there has been worse. And let's talk about LeGarrette Blount punching a player and going after fans in the stands back in 2009 when he was at Oregon. And the entire 2011 season for Texas A&M. Do we not remember Johnny Football's freshman year? There's just a documentary made about it very recently. All the shit that went on there down in Texas, that was bad. I think those two were worse. This is a simple hiccup and mistake. It shouldn't happen, but you can't really slander the kid to a high degree for this. This is, discipline. Say, Shadur, look, you're a great quarterback. You're going into the NFL one day. Don't do this again. That's it.
Yeah, this isn't the all-time worst for me. I think anything that involves, a type of lengthy arrest, we've had a few of those, probably qualifies as worse. But I think in terms of his draft stock, this is probably the worst thing that could happen, because my question as well, Tom, was whether this was actually him or like a PR guy behind the scenes. I think with any other team, my instant reaction would have been, this is probably a PR guy. With this Colorado team, instantly I was like, this was definitely Shadur in the locker room posting his Instagram stories, hey, come buy my merch. I have like no doubt in my mind that this was actually him. So Dion was hyping him up, saying he didn't want to go to the draft this year because he wanted to be the number one pick next year. If I'm an NFL team and I see this kind of attitude, you need to be the best prospect of all time for me to still want to take you, especially if I'm risking a number one pick on you. So in terms of how things played out, this isn't the worst situation for the world of college football or for Colorado, but for his personal draft stock, I think this is an awful, awful look, and one of the worst things he could do besides, pulling in Aaron Hernandez and getting so much shot. So, for our last one here, we have you blew it. We witnessed in back-to-back weeks two of the worst losses, and at least in my recent memory, for college football in terms of throwing away the games. We had Miami to Georgia Tech from one of the most egregious coaching calls I've ever seen, and then as we just talked about, Colorado to Stanford, blowing a 29-point lead after the half. So I want to know which was worse or more embarrassing. Andy, I'll start with you.
I actually think that the Miami loss is more embarrassing because they had that game won. There was less than a minute left. All you had to do was take a knee. The one thing you can't do is fumble the ball. You fumble it, whether it was actually a fumble or not. Well, it got called up like that on the field. To give Georgia Tech the ball with 36 seconds left and then let them score a touchdown is pretty fucking, like, I don't know. I think the Miami one takes it for me just because they won. Like they had no business actually losing that game because there was less than a minute left when they actually blew it, whereas Colorado just played one half and then gave up. You know what I mean? Or not gave up, but took their foot off the gas. And Colorado's defense has proved all year is hot garbage. So it's pretty incredible they actually shut out Stanford in one of the halves.
That is a very fair assessment. Tom, what about you? Which is worse?
Sorry, guys. I'm actually going to go the other way here on this one. Yes, Miami losing to Georgia Tech was bad, 23-20. But let's not forget, too, Yellow Jackets also came within 5 points of Louisville in week 1, and they beat Wake Forest 30-16 on the road. Yes, this loss was very bad for the Canes, and all of Andy's points are 100% accurate. But I think Colorado losing at home for me personally is worse due to the fact that they were leading 29-0 at halftime. We had the social media blunder on the sideline. Travis Hunter is back healthy. Shadur's draft stock is hurting. and they had 17 penalties for 127 yards. 17 penalties, 127 yards. Not acceptable football. The discipline was lacking. They lost to 1-4 Stanford guys. That's bad. That's really, really bad. Did you see the fan with his head in his arms post game? That poor guy getting consoled by the girl there. That's a tough scene. That's a very, very tough scene. And Colorado's season is over. Like, over.
Yeah, I'm split on this one now. Very good points on both sides. I was leaning leaning Colorado, but Andy has almost turned me to Miami. My comparison here is that Miami's was insanely dumb. I will give it that, but it was still, a bit of like a freak accident. Even if your coach calls a run, the running back is still a little responsible. In his mind, he's got to know the second he gets touched, he can just go down instead of fighting for yards. God, yeah, I'm so split. I feel like a judge here, and I just listened to two lawyers give their case here. But yeah, just the attitudes of Colorado is that they've killed the entire hype of the rest of their season with what they've done. I mean,
they might not make a bowl now.
Yeah, which is I don't think it would be, it wouldn't be the worst for the recruiting because they still have, it's like an Instagram team at this point. Players can still go there knowing, they've got Dion, they've got the hype, they've got the documentary and stuff that they're doing. It's so tough for me. Colorado has just been such a disaster the last couple weeks. I think I'm going to stick with them though. Although, yeah, Miami, I think they've learned to never, at least Lanning has learned to never pull something like that again with running when he can just take a knee. But yeah, two of the worst situations I've ever seen in football. That'll move us on to our next segment is Parlay Party. We're going to throw down our weekly parlay bets here. 2 requirements, as always, minimum pick of 4 teams, games, spreads, whatever you want. Minimum payout of plus 1,000. Andy, I'll start with you. Hit us with your parlay.
Yeah, boys. So this week I kind of did it a little different. Well, not really like super different, but just how I kind of made my picks. I just looked at some of the teams that are better at covering the spread in college football so far this year, and said fuck it, I'm going to ride with them. So I'm going first. I'm going Penn State plus 5.5. They're 6-0 against the spread this year, fellas. That's literally it. Haven't lost yet. I'm jumping on the train now. Of course, that does mean they are due to not cover. Next up, Oklahoma minus 17.5. Again, 6-0 against the spread on the year, and their offense looks really good. Sorry, Brian. I just don't know if UCF hangs around in this one. Next, I'm going to hold my nose and take the Iowa Hawkeyes minus 3.5. This one, you're never going to guess. They're playing Minnesota. Minnesota is 1-5 against the spread on the year, so that is my reasoning there. I believe the Hawkeyes are 4-2 against the spread, so covering mostly their defense will just suffocate the non-existent Minnesota offense. And I take the under in this game. It's like 31.5. Take it. Let's be a part of history, fellas. And then finally, I'm throwing Rutgers on the card, boys. Rutgers minus 5.5 at Indiana. Indiana is fucking terrible. Rutgers has been a covering machine. They're 5-1-1 against the spread. Hoosiers are 3-3 against the spread, so I don't love that, but it's 4 legs, $10. It's plus 11.43. I've got a 50% boost on FanDuel. I'm going to use on it to get up to 17.16, so $10 to win 171.62 with the boost applied. I will say that. If you don't have a boost, I'm sorry. Go fuck yourself.
All right. I am going to bring back the counterpoints here. So, Tom, is there anything on the card that you don't like here?
As far as Andy is concerned, I think they're all legit. Penn State's done a good job covering this year. Iowa, good pick. And overall, I just really like not that this was a conservative bet, Andy, but it was definitely well thought out. I can tell you put a lot of time into it, did the proper research, and he's like, nah, stop praising me this much, Tom. Yeah, Oklahoma. Brian, I'm sorry, that's a good one. And then Rutgers, Piscataway is going to be very happy on Saturday, in my opinion. When was the last time Rutgers was this good? Shiano in full force.
Yeah, for me, this is one of my favorite ones from Andy this season. No need for either of you to apologize about the Oklahoma on here. I have seen our team play, so I know how that game will likely go. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd go Iowa minus 3.5, just because, they barely score any points. So, you're asking them to not only score some points, but outscore another team by more than a field goal.
I'm betting on a defensive touchdown.
Oh, okay, I do like that. I like that. But yeah, I guess that would be my pick if I had to sneak one in there at Andy's. Tom, hit us with your parlay.
All right, so you're going to see a couple similar bets to Andy's, but mine is a little bit bigger. It is 6 total legs. I believe this is the 3rd week in a row I've gone with 6, ladies and gentlemen. First up, Penn State, similar to Andy, but I had 6.5 before the line changed to 5.5, so I'm
Nice.
keeping it at 6.5. So that's 1 point further away from Andy, so 1 point safer. So basically, I'm betting them to lose by less than a touchdown. That's basically what I'm betting on them for. Fun fact, guys, Kyle McCord, did you know, was originally recruited by Penn State.
Oh.
Little fun fact there for you. This comes in at minus 123. Oklahoma minus 17.5. I believe that's plus 103. Central Florida, I mean, Brian, you guys have yet to win a Big 12 game. I hope you do at some point, but I hope it's not this weekend. I think Oklahoma right now is possibly trending towards the CFP if they continue to keep this up. Dylan Gabriel entering his name into the Heisman discussion. And I think a lot of points are going to be scored, which is why I think they'll win safely by 2 touchdowns and at least 1 field goal. Next up, third leg, Tennessee plus 11.5 comes in at minus 135. Bama is just not good enough this year to beat Tennessee by 2 full touchdowns. So Bama's allowed to beat Tennessee by 10, and I'll still win that. So I'm taking Bama to win by 10 or less. The Vols won this game outright last year. I believe it was 52-49 game, but Hendon Hooker is not the quarterback anymore. Jalen Hyatt's gone. Cedric Tillman's gone. A lot of those guys are gone. And I believe the game is at Bama. So I think plus 11.5 is very safe, minus 135. Fourth leg, Oregon, Washington State. Despite what Washington State produced on the field offensively last week, I think a lot of points will be scored in this game. It is a Pac-12 game, ladies and gentlemen. Over 58.5. I sold points here. Comes at minus 126. I trust Bo Nix, but the Cougars did lay an egg 2 weeks in a row, so this potentially, to critique myself, could be my most risky pick up to this point. Fifth leg, Iowa money line. I don't have as much confidence as Andy as them winning by 3.5, but Minnesota is bad. They should have lost their first game of the season. I forget who it was to, but they found a way to win it.
I think it was Northwestern.
Yes, Northwestern. That is correct. Minus 149 is Iowa money line. Duke plus 14.5, plus 103. This is my final leg. If Riley Leonard plays, I'll look like a genius because I like Duke in one score, and I don't think this is a blowout. The plus 14.5 will not come in at plus 103 if Riley Leonard starts on Saturday night. He hasn't played since the Notre Dame game. Bet on Duke to cover now before they announce Riley Leonard, yay or nay. And this comes in, I believe the total, guys, I have it on my phone. It is, I know it's on the screen as well, $10 for, the odds are plus 2,580, but if you do the 50% boost, plus 3,870, $10 for 397.
All right, Andy, you got any that you want to?
Let's see here. I really like this one too. I guess a little worried about the Washington State offense that's looked just atrocious the last 2 weeks going up against a really, really solid Oregon defense. But who's to say Bo Nix and the offense don't come out and score fucking 50 points themselves? So
Yep.
I guess the only one I'd really, really be worried about is Duke plus 14.5. I know their defense has played outstanding so far this year. They are on the road. If they do have Riley Leonard back, that's great. Still coming off a pretty rough injury against Notre Dame in his first game in a few weeks. So I do. I think this has one a great. I do really like it. I think this has a great chance of hitting. I can't really find too much to pick apart here, Tommy.
Like it, although I'm not liking how much we like each other's parlays because that
Exactly.
could spell disaster here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I had to pick one, I'll go different. I'll go with the Tennessee plus 11.5, just because this is a massive rivalry hate game here. These two teams absolutely hate each other. Complete disrespect anytime they're both on the field together. Yeah, Tennessee just lost so many pieces. I know Alabama is really, really bad, but this is like that game of the year where it's a home game with that crowd. That crowd doesn't care how bad. They're still ranked 11th. They want to beat the hell out of Tennessee, and they will let you know it. So, I could see Alabama maybe squeaking out like a 2-touchdown win here to break it. But, who knows? Both of these teams are, much worse than I think we thought they were going to be. So, the game could honestly go either way here. And then we'll move on to the last parlay, which is mine. I just threw it in the chat for you guys because I realized I did not send it to you later. It is a small one this week because we've just been taking L's week after week. It is 4 teams, starting with Oklahoma minus 12.5. Oklahoma is on everyone's card, but UCF does have a little bit of an offense here. So I bought a few points towards UCF side, towards Oklahoma side. Bought them down to minus 12.5 for minus 187. Second up, Air Force. Andy talked about going with teams that are great against the spread. They are, I believe, either 5-1 or 6-1 themselves. Sold them down just a little bit to minus 9.5. I think they cover that pretty easily, but just wanted to be safe because I want to get a W. I have also Iowa on this card, but with Minnesota for the under. Sold a few points because I would just hate myself if the only thing that lost my parlay this week was a Minnesota-Iowa hitting the over. that would just I'd be curled up in a ball until next Thursday when we film again.
I think you're safe with 36 points. I really do.
Yeah, the one note that I love about this one is that the over/under, it actually was at 35 at one point, and people just ate that up like a cheesecake. So it is now down to 31, I believe. But if it holds, it would be only the 11th such game since 2005 where the under was this low, with 7 of those games involving your Iowa Hawkeyes. No surprise there. And then to boost this past the plus 1,000 requirement, I'm going with my underdog of the week here, Utah money line. USC has gotten eaten up these past couple of weeks there on shaky ground. Yeah, still no Cam Rising for Utah. That injury makes it look like he's not going to be back this week. But listen, that Utah defense is hungry, and USC's offensive line is non-existent. So at plus 245, I think they can pull this off. It's going to be my riskiest one. I'm going to assume that's at least one of the ones you guys don't like about this one. That is plus 1207 total, $10 to win, $130. Andy, I'll start with you. What don't you like about this one?
Well, I don't like that you just lied to me and said Air Force is 5-1 against the spread, because
Are they not?
They're 3-3 against the spread. But they are 6-0 on the year. That's not the one I worry about. It is the Utah one, but I was worried about your Arizona money line last week, and that certainly worked out for you. So yeah, that would be the only thing I'm concerned about. I've seen this Utah offense and the way they've operated without Cam Rising at times, and it makes me a little worrisome. I would assume Caleb Williams comes into this game pretty fucking pissed off after his just atrocious performance against the Irish. But yeah, there will be no points scored in the Minnesota-Iowa game. I'm not worried about that at all. I love the getting Oklahoma. You only need them to win by 13. Yeah, I worry about Utah in this one.
All right, I'm gonna have to double check. Either I'm wildly misread Air Force, and I need to pray to God that they are better than that 3-3 spread, or yeah, I don't know what's up. I must have misread that. So now I'm sketched out.
So
Tom,
that's from teamrankings.com is where I'm getting this information here.
Could be
I don't like this.
Sources.
Well, I don't like this as much anymore. Tom, what don't you like about this one?
I like everything with wishful thinking, Brian. But it's not just no Cam Rising, who hasn't played yet this year. Brant Huth, their starting tight end, is out again. So who the heck is going to pick up the slack? Who's going to succeed at quarterback? I know USC has an awful defense, but yeah, they're plus 245 for a reason. I'm not revealing who I'm picking for this game, since we'll discuss that in a later segment, but I will say that is the biggest leg of concern. It's really the only leg of concern here. I will go out on a limb and say all of those other 3 legs will 100% hit.
Thank you. That makes me feel a little bit better after what Andy just did to tear me down, tear my parlay down.
Sorry, bud.
It's okay. You got to be honest. That is why we've lost so many of these.
Yeah.
But
the one we won, nobody actually bet on.
Exactly.
Stop it.
Although you did win a parlay last week, not on the show, so maybe that's the problem.
That is the problem.
We should publicize our picks.
Share any of them.
All right. Well, that will move us into our shots and chasers here, our games of the week. Starting at noon, we have the biggest matchup of the week in terms of ranking. We have Ohio State taking on Penn State in a huge Big Ten East matchup. Andy, who do you like in this game?
Give me the Nittany Lions. I'm not sold on Ohio State. I'm curious to see what senior citizen Ryan Day will call out after this one. Both two, pretty explosive offenses. At Ohio State averaging just a shade over 450 per game, and PSU just a shade over 430 yards per game. Penn State so far in the year, 44 points a game. They're coming off a 63-point performance against, I believe it was UMass. So not anybody super impressive, but they've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves after scoring that many points. I know they're going to Ohio State, but give me the Nittany Lions in an upset here on the road in the Horseshoe.
Ooh, getting spicy right off the bat. Tom, who do you like to win this game?
Well, you guys know how I feel about Ohio State over the last month. Penn State has not beaten Ohio State since 2016. Neither team has allowed over 17 points in any game this season. This will be a tough defensive fought battle. Do not mess with the over in this game. Quarterback Kyle McCord is coming into his own, just 1 pick on the year. He's improved week after week. Travion Henderson on the ground. He's not racking up yards, Brian. I'm sorry. I know he was your Heisman dark horse, but he is excellent in short yardage situations. Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and Cade Stover operate the offense wonderfully. We need to see more of Jack Sawyer off the edge. They have good pressure coming from Tumalau and Tommy Eichenberg at middle linebacker, but where is Jack Sawyer? This is supposed to be a second, third round pick. If he doesn't pick up the slack, he could fall into day 3 of this year's draft. Now for Penn State, they're coming off a dominant 41-7 win at Purdue. Drew Aller really good start to his collegiate career here with the Nittany Lions. Has not thrown a pick all season. He takes care of the ball very well. He relies on his backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. And then, of course, you have tight end Tyler Warren, who has 5 touchdowns on just 16 catches. You guys ask me every week why I like tight ends. Why? They're touchdown machines. They don't get many catches, but when they do, they matter. I also like Keandre Lambert-Smith at receiver. And their defense. Props to Dominic DeLuca, man. This guy reads zone coverage really well. He fills in the A-gaps. He can go out on ISO coverage, which most linebackers can't do. I mean, Chop Robinson and Andre Isaac are very, very elite off the edge. But what did I say last week when we were picking Notre Dame USC? Vegas knows something that we don't. While Ryan Day may be a Class 1 douche, he will see 7-0. Ohio State wins.
Tom, absolutely love the ending there to that one.
That was incredible delivery.
Didn't see that coming at all, although I probably should have, given how much hate you throw towards Ohio State. Yeah, for me, the most interesting thing about this one is that I think a lot of people are considering this a must-win for both teams. I don't think it's a must-win here for Ohio State, but maybe that puts more pressure on them. Just to remind everyone, Ohio State didn't win the Big Ten East last year and still made the playoff. Obviously, that was with the loss to Michigan, who's up there again this year, but was, I believe, top 4 at the time during that matchup. So it was enough of a quality loss to keep them in that. If they lose this, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on that Michigan game for them, but they still, that loss is probably still like a top 5 team, and they're still kind of in the hunt there. Penn State, I think, is under a little more pressure, particularly because of the nature of how the rankings are right now. They're sitting down there at 6, so by nature of being outside of the top 4, even if they win this game, they need to win by probably 40 points to move ahead of, I would say, FSU. Moves into, FSU is 3 or 4 now.
4, I think.
Yeah, okay. So to hop over FSU, I think they just need to absolutely obliterate Ohio State this week, and I don't think that's a possibility at all. As far as players go, though, Allard has improved for Penn State, but they've only played 2 quality defenses so far. Andy, yes, I am giving credit to your defense. It's not the best year for you guys, but still a decent defense. You've retained enough to be considered such, despite some of the results this year. I still think it's a good group. So this will be a big test. I'll note that Allard did actually have a pretty good game against Iowa's defense, the other defense that I'm referring to, 25 of 37 with 4 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So, I mean, Iowa's defense is good year in and year out. I don't know if this Ohio State's defense is much better than Iowa's this year. So, yeah, they might be able to hold on here. Credit where credit's due. And like you said, Tom, Travion Henderson not doing it for me this year. He was my dark horse for Heisman. Another injury, and that adds to the injuries of Ohio State's running back core. They have Henderson, Mayan Williams, both out last game with unspecified injuries. So, do we trust McCord enough if he has to throw the ball without his top 2 running backs? I don't know. I think it's going to be a hell of a game, though. I think I have to give the edge to Ohio State just because it's a home game at the Shoe. But, I'm going to be up early for this one because this is going to be, I think, one of the best games of the year here. Moving into the chaser for noon, we have Oklahoma taking on my UCF, who were just brutally torn apart by both Andy and Tom in their parlays here. So I think I know you're going to take, but let's talk about this game. Andy, how bad is Oklahoma beating my Knights here?
Hopefully by at least 18 points. So my concern is can this UCF defense get off the field on 3rd down? You got an Oklahoma offense coming in averaging 511 yards per game and converting over half of their 3rd down tries. They're 15th in the country at 51.2%. And the Knights on defense are 195th in the country, allowing their opponents to convert 45.9% of the time. If the Knights can get the running game going, maybe they can score and make this game a shootout. They are just a hair under 250 rush yards per game, top 10 in the country. The Oklahoma defense, though, only allowing 114 rush yards per game. So they have their work cut out for them, but I do like Oklahoma to win this one by 3 touchdowns.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, look, there's going to be a lot of offense in this game. Each team averages over 500 yards of offense per game. Dylan Gabriel, this is a bit of a full circle moment for him going up against his old team in UCF. Oklahoma's rested up. They're coming off their bye week. They beat Texas 2 weeks ago in Texas, which I called. I really like what they have at receiver. Nick Anderson, 6 tutties. Drake Stoops has 4. Jaleel Farouk and Andrel Anthony both over 400 receiving yards. But what's the difference this year for the Sooners is their defense. They're led by a legit captain, Danny Stutzman, who racks up tackles left and right. Again, sideline to sideline scraper. Billy Bowman and Ethan Downs are solid players too. Gentry Williams with 3 picks. But UCF has a solid young quarterback in Timmy McClain, who has impressed me, Brian, who I'm sure Brian can analyze more in just a moment. But RJ Harvey is the focal point of their offense, 6 rushing touchdowns, over 500 yards. They need players like Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker to step up. And then Tremont Morris-Brash needs to get pressure off the edge, in addition to Malachi Lawrence. I think where they lack is their secondary depth. They have Corey Thornton back there, who's solid, but outside of that, who is going to step up and make a play for them against Dylan Gabriel? Give me the Sooners.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot ride with my boys here as well. I will say, though, I didn't want to bring this up and be too negative about your parlays, but I think we can maybe hold on a little bit and make this at least close. Yeah, the story of the game here is Dylan Gabriel at UCF, obviously transferred to Oklahoma. And I don't think anyone should give him too much hate, especially coming from, not that UCF fans are mean or anything. We've had multiple QBs transfer away from us. But listen, he did it before we announced we were going to the Big 12. So this is just a kid who knew he had the talent. He wanted to go to an elite team, show off his talents, because he doesn't really have the size to get the call for the NFL draft. Maybe like a round 7 guy or undrafted free agent, but at least now he can show his talents on the big stage. He passed for over 8,000 yards at his time at UCF. He's doing a hell of a job with Oklahoma already. Somehow, this is the oddest stat to me, we somehow average more yards per game than Oklahoma. I'm sure they were taken down a little bit from that Texas game. I think they still had a heck of a lot of yards there, but I think that might have helped us a bit in that comparison. But as far as our players go, RJ Harvey, Johnny Richardson, Tom mentioned a run. There's a solid double punch there in a run game. Both of them 400 rushing yards already. And you pair that with Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker at wide receiver, both really good wide receivers. I almost want to say 2 of the best in the G5. But we're in the P5 now, so I don't know if I put them best in the P5, but solid receivers for us so far, both with 20-plus catches and 400 yards receiving. Last week, I said JMU was a very socialist team for how they spread the love with their touchdowns. UCF is right there with them, handing out touchdowns equally and freely, with 5 receivers having 2 touchdowns each at least, and 13 total players who have an offensive touchdown. I don't know if that leads all of college football, but that is a heck of a lot. There are 13 different players scoring for your offense, so maybe that's the silver lining here. Oklahoma's defense, not great. They can't guard everyone. I don't know. But Tom, you talked about Timmy McClain. I really don't have any expectations for McClain at this point. We've been watching Rice Plumlee for 2 years. The kid likes to take off like he's the road runner. His arm just awful. McClain's only a sophomore who doesn't have much time under his belt. So this is just one of those games where you kind of let him grow. We haven't really played too many good teams yet, despite the fact that we haven't beaten any of the Big 12 teams yet. So, I'm just giving him a free pass for the rest of the season. What I'm more concerned about here is what this does to our recruiting, especially if we get blown out, because, like I said, we lose guys like Dylan Gabriel to these elite programs when they want to, move to that next level. I don't know if some of these guys, especially on the offense, are going to want to wait for someone like McClain to grow under Gus Malzahn offense to stay here. And I can definitely see some of our top running backs and wide receivers jumping into the transfer portal in the offseason here. So he's been good enough. He's got over 1,000 yards already. 64% completion percentage. Only been sacked 10 times. He's been doing fairly well, I'll say, getting out of the pocket when he's been rushed and not taking too much damage. But this Oklahoma team, I think, is just too much for us. You know what? I'm going to change my mind. I think that they beat us by so much that it covers both your parlays. How do you like that one? I've soured on us in the last 5 minutes. But that'll move us into our 3:30, starting with Alabama-Tennessee. Hell of a rivalry game here, despite the teams not being great. Andy, who do you like in this one?
So this one's in Alabama. Obviously, last year, Tennessee had that field goal to win it after a crazy game. Fans rushed the field, took the goalpost. I think Alabama looking for some revenge here this year, fellas. A little bit of a bad taste in their mouth, obviously, after the loss last year. I know it's a mostly new team, but still, it's not the typical Bama offense we're used to seeing, right? They do, they're 109th in the country in total yards per game, 132nd in pass yards, and tied for 131st in rush yards. I just don't remember the last time we've seen an Alabama offense that has just not seemed to click like this. But despite that, they're still 6-1. They still have a very solid defense that's only allowing 16 points per game. I think they get this game. I think they get it done. I'm giving them the edge at home against Tennessee. Joe Milton was my Heisman dark horse at the beginning of the year. They are 5-1. It's not like they're out of the conversation by any means, but they're not. You wouldn't say they're one of the best teams in the country. I guess at least I would.
All right, Tom.
In order for the Vols to stay competitive and win this game, they have to run the ball very, very well and keep Bama off the field. They average 231 rushing yards per game, so that works into their favor. Their only loss this year was at Florida. However, that was their only true road game so far this season. This is their second true road game against Alabama. Joe Milton the third, he's okay. He's nothing to ride home about. but he's a solid quarterback. Again, having to replace Hendon Hooker, that's not an easy job for whoever takes over. Jalen Wright averaging 7 yards per carry. They could lean on him. Jabari Small, not so small when he's on the field. And then you have Dylan Sampson, who is a touchdown maker, 6 on the season. He's phenomenal. Squirrel White, got a chance to interview him at my job a couple weeks back. Really interesting person. And then you have Ramel Keaton, who needs to step up too. I look at Alabama and what they did. All right, well, they lost to Texas by 10, but that was over a month ago. Milroe has improved. They finally stick with him as the QB. They finally realized that Tyler Buchner was not good at Notre Dame, and he wouldn't be good at Alabama either. Chase McClellan, 3 touchdowns. Roydell Williams, solid on the ground for them. Jermaine Burton, I like Caleb Downs. Dallas Turner is a beast. 7 sacks on the season. He'll be a first-round pick this year. And then Chris Braswell's stock is improving. They have players on defense. Tennessee's not winning this game on the road. You can't handle Florida on the road. You're not handling Alabama on the road. Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, neither team here is as good as we expected, but this is always a great rivalry game to watch. Last season, like you guys mentioned, number 6 Vols snapped their 15-game losing streak in this rivalry with one of the most exciting endings ever, especially if you're one of those Tennessee fans that got to see that win live in that stadium. The walk-off field goal, just absolutely incredible. Joe Milton threw just 100 yards in last week's game against Texas A&M, probably the best defense they have faced, and is averaging just 210 yards. So like we were saying earlier, you no longer have your top quality guys here. They're all gone for the draft. Milton comes in. He's got an arm. I'll give him that. But he's only averaging 210 yards, and they haven't really played anyone as difficult as this Alabama defense. It's not one of Alabama's best in recent years, but it's still an Alabama Nick Saban-led defense. So those 10 touchdowns through 6 games so far, I don't know if that's going to get it done. One of the probably biggest injuries that's hurting them, they lost Brew McCoy, season ending. So yeah, he doesn't have him to throw to. It plays into it a little bit, but this Tennessee offense is just struggling a lot more than it did last season. Alabama ranks 126 nationally in sacks allowed per game. We give Milton, a lot of hate for struggling. He likes to take off on his feet. I think part of that is because that O-line cannot protect him at all, which is a weird thing to say. Because again, those lines for Alabama are always so solid, and they've given up 31 sacks so far compared to 9 for the Vols. So I like to give touchdown interception ratios. That's one of the worst ratios I've seen in terms of line play here, and I think that's going to play a big factor in how this game turns out. On Alabama's side, I will say, Tom mentioned him, Dallas Turner leads the SEC in sacks with 7. He's an absolute animal. Tennessee, my biggest note here is that the only big game they played on the road already was against Florida, who is on shaky ground. Alabama is better than Florida, despite their struggles. Playing in Alabama is harder than playing in the swamp. I know Florida fans won't want to hear that, but listen, nothing is clicking for this Alabama offense. Milroe is struggling. Jace McClellan averaging less than 80 yards per game on the ground, and leading wide receiver Jermaine Burton has less than 450 yards through the air with 6 games played. It's a rough-looking Alabama team, but I think Tennessee is just missing too many pieces, so I'm sticking with Alabama here, Roll Tide. Moving into our chaser for 3:30, we have Iowa taking on Minnesota. I'm so sorry to everyone who is reading this, who is watching this, who turns on this game. No one should watch this, but at the same time, everyone should watch it for what you're about to witness. I don't know if anyone here is going to actually turn this game on, but who do you think is going to win the game?
I mean, this is true sickos shit right here. You go from watching Oklahoma UCF and 2 offenses averaging over 500 yards a game to this, and it is like watching a different sport. Iowa, they are the 252nd ranked offense in the country as far as yards per game. They're 254th with only 116 passing yards a game. Minnesota and Kalamalakis, I think that's how you say his name. I don't know. It's a Greek dude, is their quarterback. He is not doing much better. They're only averaging 132 yards over through the air. So we know what both of these teams want to do, or I guess we know what both of these teams can't really do is pass. They want to try to run the ball. Iowa has looked okay on the ground the last few weeks, but most of those were from big, long runs that they had broken off. And then other than that, they were only averaging about 2.9 yards per carry. So the Hawkeyes are very beatable. Their defense is good. Cooper DeJean is a name to watch on the back end for them. I'm guessing that Iowa gets at least 1 defensive touchdown here. We talked about it earlier. Take the under. I think Iowa wins the game. I have them in a bet, and it's crazy because they truly do have a path to 11-1, which would just piss off like so many people. But again, I would like to think their day of reckoning would be coming if they did make the Big Ten championship game and just getting their doors absolutely fucking blown off by whoever comes out of the East. But yeah, give me Iowa in this game. I don't think a lot of points are going to be scored either.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, as I alluded to in my parlay, Iowa will win this game. Quickly here, again, only loss was the shutout, or when they got blown out, or shut out, I should say, by Penn State 31-0. Cade McNamara, since transferring over, has fit in just beautifully into this Iowa offense. And what I mean beautifully is absolute dog shit. 505 passing yards with 4 touchdown passes to 3 picks. LaShawn Williams is their offense. Eric All is their offense. Their 2 leading receivers are tight ends.
I think
Eric
All's
All
hurt.
is hurt, yes. And Luke Latchley is going to have to step up. He's their second leading receiver, guys, at 10 catches for 131 yards. That is their second leading receiver. What I like what Cooper DeJean, as Andy mentioned, and Sebastian Castro bring to the table. Minnesota has lost to UNC, Michigan, and Northwestern. Surprisingly, Northwestern is 3-3, and he thought they would get 1 win this year.
Yeah, that's true. Hand
That
up.
is very true. But Minnesota, outside of Tyler Nubin, they don't have much on defense. They don't. I could see Iowa grounding and pounding like a 20-play, 9-10 minute drive for their only offensive touchdown of the game.
No, it'll be a 14 minutes, 75-yard drive that they settle for a fucking field goal on the 5-yard line.
I feel like it'll be one of those ones too where it happens at the end of the third, going into the fourth. So there'll be that 15-minute break. So technically, the drive's going to be like an hour long for anyone watching. Again, I apologize to everyone for this being on the card, but I mean, this is like a car accident. Everyone stops and looks.
Can't look away.
Yeah, exactly. But no, as far as the game notes here, this is one of the worst offenses you're ever going to see in your life. If you do choose to turn this game on, you'll be able to tell your kids about it. They'll be able to tell their kids about it. That's how bad this offense is. Iowa Hawkeyes put up just 237 yards last week against Wisconsin. You're saying, hey, that's actually pretty decent. Not great, but not terrible. Except for the fact that that stat is a little disingenuous because over 1/3 of those yards came from a single play, and that was their touchdown to break the 0-0 deadlock in the second quarter, a run by LaShawn Williams. So yeah, if 1/3 of your total yards in the game come from a single play where you just happen to break through, I don't think you're doing too well. Brian Frentz, what are you doing? Shout out my guy to him. Iowa, Tommy mentioned it. You got that tight end news for us. Their starting tight end right now is Steven Stylianos. Because like you said, Eric All out with a knee injury, out for the season. Also missing Luke Lachey out, not for the season, but I believe he was their number 2. So he is out for the season?
No.
Oh,
He is not out for the season.
Okay. Well, I mean,
That's
I guess silver lining for Iowa there for their struggling offense. But yeah, in terms of defense, leave it to Iowa to be one of 2 teams to have 2 defensive players in the top 25 for total tackles. As the linebackers, Jay Higgins, who has 87. He's really putting in the work there. And Nick Jackson with 59. And I will say those are 2 of the whitest names in all of college football. That's very, very Iowa.
Iowa versus Minnesota. What do you want?
Yeah, very Iowa of them. 3 of the last 4 meetings have been decided by 5 or less points. Andy said hammer the under every single segment here, even when Iowa is not involved, because you really, really should. Last year, 13-10. Man, that was on a game-winning walk-off field goal with 28 seconds left too. So 20 points through 59 minutes. Yeah, I have to go Iowa here as well. I think maybe they scored the only points of the game. The Gophers, kind of embarrassing, lost a 21-point lead. Shout out Colorado. Late in the third quarter against Northwestern, of all people. They went on to lose that game in overtime. So they don't have what it takes to score any points. And they blow it against teams that don't have an offense or defense. So I'm taking Iowa with the edge here. Moving into the last games, the night games, we have FSU taking on Duke here. Tom, this was on your card. So I'm going to start with you because Riley Leonard is the topic of conversation here. Who do you like in this game?
Well, I have a few things to say about this. Clemson took FSU to overtime. Boston College came within 2 points. Jordan Travis, nearly 1,500 passing yards, 4 touchdown rushes. That's very comparable to Graham Mertz, by the way, who we have shitted on in years past. Trey Benson, really solid in the run game, north, south, you name it. They were without Johnny Wilson, I believe, last week, and they still won with ease. Keon Coleman stepped up. He smelled the coffee, 7 touchdown receptions on the year. This is a game that I think Jaheim Bell has a chance to dominate over the middle of the field against that Duke defense. Kalen DeLoach and Jared Verse are the impact players for the Noles on defense. Duke, they lost to Notre Dame by 7 points. Will Riley Leonard play? If not, it will be Henry Bellin IV. Jordan Waters, 426 rush yards, 9 touchdowns. Jalen Calhoun and Jordan Moore are real solid players. Duke has weapons. They may not be eye-popping on the stat sheet if you're a box score person, but they get the job done. You know who else gets the job done? Their defensive front. Brandon Johnson and Carter, they clog running lanes. The FSU interior O-line will definitely be tested. If Riley Leonard plays, I think this is a 1-score game. And if he does play, Duke will win by 1 score.
Whoa.
Ooh.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, for this game, it's the FSU offense, the unstoppable force, versus the Duke defense, the immovable object. FSU putting up 42 points a game, good for 7th in the country. Duke Blue Devils only giving up just under 10 at 9.8. Can the Duke offense keep up? Can the Duke defense, slow down the Seminoles? I don't know. I think Florida State wins the game. I mean, obviously, it's a big if. With the Riley Leonard status. So obviously, if you're a Duke fan, you'd feel a lot better with him out there. But I'm going to take the Seminoles. This is the first matchup between these two teams since 2020, boys. It's been a while.
Yeah. And I believe FSU is like 19-0 in this matchup.
I believe it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Duke's a basketball school up until the last few years, so understandable. We won't give them too much hate. But yeah, obviously, Leonard playing or not is the topic of conversation because Bellin was not good last week at all. And if he is the starting QB, FSU is going to eat him alive. Yes, FSU does have injuries of their own. Wilson was held out the previous game. Is expected to play this game, though, which will help Jordan Travis for FSU. The FSU offense is just very, very good this year. I don't know if I put them up there with the Jameis-led offense of about a decade ago, but they look really good. Jordan Travis looks really comfortable. They've scored 30-plus points in every game this season. Duke's defense is good, but if they want a chance here, they really, really need to hold them under 30. That is FSU I'm speaking of course. And that is especially if Riley Leonard is out, because Bellin is not going to put up 30 points with Duke's offense here against the Noles defense. My biggest concern here is that Duke's only road game this season was against UConn. That was in front of, allegedly, according to tickets sold, 29,000 fans. Put an asterisk next to it because I think it's probably closer to about 17 from the pictures I saw. FSU, on the other hand, had 94% attendance 2 weeks ago against Southern Miss, and that was still good for 74,000 plus people. This is a game. It's at Bill Campbell. It's at night. There's going to be 75,000 Noles fans doing what they do, doing the chop, fully re-energized. It's their first great season in years. I think FSU runs away with this one. If not just on the energy inside the stadium alone, but based on the fact that they're going to be hyped up for the fact that if there's a backup QB in here, that defense is going to want to destroy him, get that crowd going crazy. And I think FSU's defense is good enough to keep this 30-point streak alive. So I'm going with the Noles. That was a lot. Moving into our last one, we have USC taking on Utah. USC has been struggling. Andy, start with you on this one. Can they recover, or are the Utes going to take them down?
Again, this is such another explosive offense going up against a defense that has played pretty incredible so far to start the year. The Utes only allowing 12 points per game, only 66 yards on the ground to their opponents. Obviously, we think of USC, and they're definitely more of a passing team, top 10 in the country with 330 yards through the air per game. For me, if Utah has any chance here, the offense has to play just about as good as they've been able as they will have to play all year. And the defense is going to have to get them off the field. They've been really good at doing that on third downs, only allowing a conversion on 22% of their opponent's third downs. So I think USC bounces back and gets the win. They're at home, but I think Utah's frisky. I think they're scrappy. I know they're missing Rising, and Tom mentioned they're missing Kuthi, but I still think they're able to hang around. But I think USC wins the game.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, and for those watching, I did leave an asterisk on the last game. I am picking Florida State, but if Riley Leonard plays, I think Duke wins by a field goal. Just want to reiterate that, folks. Trojans, okay, they're 4-0 in the Pac-12. Utah, they should just give Cam Rising and Brant Kuthi medical red shirts at this point. I don't see them playing this season. The Utes only allow 66.8 rush yards per game. This team held UCLA to just 7 points. Not too confident in Nate Johnson or Bryson Barnes, though. Jaquindon Jackson is their leading rusher, has just 1 They're led by Cole Bishop, who's a do-it-all type of player, causes turnovers. Jonah Elis, has 9 sacks on the year. Now for USC, well, I have a lot to say about them guys, but I'll make it quick. 4-touchdown loss to Notre Dame. People who lost money betting on USC last week, we tried to warn you. All 3 of us tried to warn you, and you didn't listen. So you're here once again listening to us tonight. Caleb Williams, over 2,000 pass yards on the year, coming off a 3-pick game, 23 touchdown passes. You add the 6 rushing, that's 29-4. Like that ratio, Brian, except it could have been 29-1 if he didn't throw 3 picks against us last week. Marshawn Lloyd on the ground. Good complimentary back in Austin Jones as well. I like those 2 a lot behind that O-line. Taj Washington and Brendan Rice, really solid. Brendan Rice stepped up last week. 8 touchdown receptions on the season. Jamil Muhammad with 6 sacks. And then Solomon Byrd with 5 3/4 fumbles. They get pressure off the edge. That's the only strength of their defense, is those guys can get to the quarterback. The rest of their defense is ass. But ultimately, Caleb Williams and his Notre Dame painted nails find a way to win this one. against Utah, only because of their quarterback situation and their offense it doesn't have as much juice this year, guys.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I guess I have to go Utah here because I put them in my in my parlay. But yeah, I actually really like this matchup, and I'm more pro Utah than both of you guys. Caleb Williams struggles throughout his career against top 25 defenses. He has played 5 Power 5 top 25 defenses in his career thus far, and the results are not pretty. In those games, he's a combined 76 for 148. That is barely above 50%, for a combined 860 yards and just a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Tom, you knew I was coming with those ratios. That is with 6 each, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So when you have that happen 1 or 2 games, you should be able to shake it off. Otherwise, it's a pattern. And yes, he eats up, what we'll say our typical Pac-12 defenses. But when you can't produce against an actual top defense, you've got to be concerned, especially when you're coming up against a Utah team that always, year in and year out, has a solid defense. Williams, like you said, had 3 interceptions last year. It was the first time in his career that he's had 3 interceptions as they got hammered by Notre Dame last weekend. And look for more of it this week. This Utah defensive line, super solid, led by junior defensive end Jonah Ellis. He leads the defensive line. And USC's O-line will need to have the game of their life because Ellis is going to be looking to eat up Caleb Williams in the backfield. Remember, he was sacked 6 times last week by the Irish, who also have, I would say, on par, if not a little better, defensive line here than Utah. But Ellis is an absolute animal. I expect him to get at least 2 by himself. So I think Caleb Williams is going to be running scared here. Yeah, Nate Johnson, I don't need to reiterate it too much. He's not too great. He's 39-72 so far. They would definitely much rather have Cam Rising back there. But there is maybe a savior in the books here, and that is Utah's Sione Vaki. He's likely going to be playing as a safety and running back yet again this season. We talk about dual threat, dual side of the ball players because of Travis Hunter this year. But Sione Vaki is maybe the better of the two. He's already averaging 10.3 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns on the ground this season, as well as being one of their best safeties on the Utes. He's their co-leading tackler on defense as well. So it's going to be a rough one, I think, for Utah. They're not as good, obviously, without Cam Rising, but I'm riding with my boys. They're on my parlay. I think this has big upset potential. Maybe I'm just riding too high on my Arizona call last week, but I'm going with the Utes here. That will wrap up our show. We'll wrap it up real quick because that went long. Got to get my boys out of here. So I'm just going to quickly, down on my left here, Andy's links down below for the Brew Party. He's got some merch out. We all get beat by his dog, Brew. He's better than all 3 of us here on the screen. Buy that merch. He's got some Brew merch on his store. Links down in the description. And to my right, links for Mr. Scavetta's shows as well down there. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the Week 8 action, and we will see everybody next week for Week 9.